President Barack Obama's budget plan is taking a big hit from those who oppose tightening Social Security and Medicare. For any belt tightening, they're opposed to looking at it. One of the controversial elements in the so-called Chained CPI. Now, that concept assumes that in tough economic times, people will scale back their spending, using a theory to calculate the cost of living adjustments for Social Security recipients. Could save the government a lot of money. But what would it mean for the people who rely on their Social Security checks as their only income? Joining us to talk about it, Benjamin Veghte. Ben is a research director at Social Security Works, which coordinates the efforts of hundreds of groups focused on Social Security issues. Thanks for being with us today,
Thank you,
Ben.
Allison. It's great to be with you.
We also have Wendy Bidwell. Wendy is the executive director of the Project to Restore America. That's a nonprofit grassroots organization dedicated to national economic recovery. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show today. So before, we sort of gave overview of where you two work, the issues that you're behind. But I'd like to hear first, I'll start with you, Wendy, how you feel about this proposal in the president's plan as it deals with Social Security.
I think it's really positive that the president has brought this forward. It's a bit of a peace offering, and it's a step in the right direction to say, hey, we have a problem here with these future promises, all these promises that we've made that we aren't necessarily able to meet. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great thing. Chained CPI just means that Social Security benefits will increase a little bit more slowly than they would if we use the current index. It doesn't mean we're making any cuts. This is, again, a slowing of this upward trend that we have.
Ben, what are your initial thoughts about this?
Well, Allison, it's just not right to be cutting Social Security as part of budget negotiations. I mean, I agree with Wendy that we have to be concerned about fiscal responsibility in general over the long term. Over the last few decades, we've accumulated major deficits in debt, and Congress has lived beyond its means. But that has nothing to do with Social Security. Social Security has not contributed a penny to the deficit or debt. And it's imagine, for example, a family where, say, your mother has been saving $150 a month their whole working lives, as we do through Social Security, and put it in a savings account. And then when she retires and she needs that money, you say, hey, Mom, sorry, actually, I need that money because I've been living beyond my means. I needed to pay off my debts. I've been going on too many vacations or spending too much on restaurants or whatever. And I need that money. That wouldn't be right because your mother can't earn money when she's elderly. And the average income for the elderly is less than $20,000 a year, the median income. So half of our parents are living on less than $20,000 a year. It's not right to take that money and pay off our debts with it.
What of that, Wendy? Some critics say, and the point Ben just made, that it unfairly targets the elderly. What do you say to people who do depend on that money right now?
Well, I believe that we're all taking a hit right now. Some people are talking about how these debt burdens are going to really influence our children. I would say that everybody in their 20s, 30s, and 40s is taking the hit right now. Since 2009, the average wage has decreased by 10%. With every round of quantitative easing that goes on, we are essentially doing the same thing that the Cyprus banks had. We aren't calling it a tax, but our savings are going down. We are eroding the dollar. So that is hitting all Americans. I think what we're talking about here is this concept of broken promises. And absolutely, I feel empathy for anyone who's had a promise broken. And absolutely, people who receive and count on Social Security, this is really disappointing and this is tough and this is going to cause a lot of problems. But I think we all have broken promises here. And we all need to kind of do what maybe a family struggling with alcoholism would do. And we have to address the problem. We have to say, we have this problem. We have to own it, and then we have to take the right measures to fix it, and we have to do the hard work. And so I think that's the bigger issue. I mean, we're going to see this going on more and more in the coming years. Larry Kotlikoff wrote about the coming generational storm, that book about a decade ago. He's now talking about a generational scrapping and fighting. And essentially, his whole thing is that our $14 trillion debt that we talk about is really a fraction of our $222 trillion future debt. That's called the fiscal gap. And the fiscal gap is essentially all of our future spending. It is what it amounts to today. So we have a real problem, and I think we have to acknowledge we're not bankrupt 10 years from now. We're bankrupt right now.
Ben, let me ask you, are there, as you see it, effective alternatives to this chained CPI approach? What can be done now? Because I don't think anybody would argue with the fact that,
Sure.
yes, we're in trouble right now.
Well, we are. I agree that we should be fiscally responsible. There's no debate about that. But again, Social Security hasn't contributed a penny to the debt, and by law it can't, and it can't even in the future. So the fiscal gap applies to the rest of the government, not to Social Security. The brilliance of Social Security and the social insurance system in general is that you pay in when you're working so that when you retire, you have the money you need. Because when you've retired or you're disabled or a parent has died, you don't have the ability to earn money. So that's how social insurance works. So if we want to improve the long-term solvency of Social Security, we should pay more in when we're working. We could raise the payroll tax a little bit. We could lift the cap on contributions. Right now, they're capped at $113,000. You don't pay anything on any income above that. There's ways to do that are feasible. But you don't take that money away from people who are retired. At the same time, if you're raising their co-payments in Medicare and you're cutting back their Social Security benefits.
I wanted to talk about that. What does this mean for Medicare, too? And Wendy, I'll ask you as well.
Sure. Well, it's a double hit right now. The proposal to increase co-payments of seniors and their deductibles in retirement and reduce their cost of living adjustment. The average income or the median income for the elderly in this country is less than $20,000. How are they going to absorb these hits? I mean, you have to remember, Allison, that in January we gave a tax cut to people making $400,000 a year. We extended tax cuts for them, and yet we're taking from people who are making $20,000 and they can't work to make up the lost income. So I think that's a big problem.
Let me stop you there. I have the rap in my ear, but Wendy, I want to give you the final word here. We're talking Medicare, just overall the health of where we are right now, these entitlement programs. What's your final word on this?
I think there again, it's a story of broken promises. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security currently take up almost 2/3 of our per capita GDP. It's outrageous. We can't handle it. We have to do something about this. By the way, Social Security was not intended to have mushroomed the way it did. It was New Deal legislation, Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, and it was built as a safety net. It used to be 41 workers paying for one beneficiary. Today it's 2.9, and it's slated to be 2 workers for every beneficiary by 2030.
I'll say, if I could just get one word in there, in terms of broken promises, people have paid into Social Security their whole lives. We've promised them that they will have their benefits in retirement. I think we should keep that promise.
Benjamin Veghte is Research Director with Social Security Works. Wendy Bidwell is the Executive Director of the Project to Restore America. Thank both of you.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.